Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe and support me. Leah stared out the smudged window of the city bus as it weaved through the concrete maze. The urban landscape blurred into a tapestry of grays and browns, mirroring the emptiness she felt inside. At 25, she had already quit her job at a marketing firm, a job that paid the bills but drained her spirit. Her days had become a monotonous loop, each one indistinguishable from the last. The recent loss of her mother had only deepened the chasm within her, leaving her unanchored and adrift. One evening, as she sifted through a box of her mother's belongings, Leah discovered a small velvet pouch. Inside was a silver locket engraved with the intricate image of a towering tree, its branches stretching out like welcoming arms. She clicked it open to find a faded photograph of herself as a child, perched on her mother's lap beneath a massive oak tree she didn't recognize. The discovery stirred something deep within her, a faint echo of a memory long forgotten. Impulsively, Leah decided to leave the city. She packed a backpack with essentials and caught the next train to wherever it was heading. She found herself disembarking at a quaint village called Willowbrook, a place that seemed untouched by time. Cobblestone streets wound between cottages adorned with blooming gardens. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and earth. At the local inn, the Silver Hearth, she was greeted by Mrs. Havisham, a warm woman with kind eyes and a knowing smile. "Not many visitors this time of year," she remarked while handing Leah a brass key. "What brings you to Willowbrook?" "Just passing through," Leah replied, though she wasn't sure if that was true. Something about the village felt inviting, almost familiar. "Well, if you're looking for tranquility, you've found the right place," Mrs. Havisham said. "Just be mindful of the forest. It's easy to lose your way among the old trees." Over the next few days, Leah wandered through the village, absorbing its slow rhythm. Locals greeted her with nods and gentle smiles but spoke in hushed tones about the forest that bordered the town. Curiosity gnawed at her. One afternoon, she overheard a conversation between two elderly men at the local bakery. "They say the soul tree reveals your true self," one whispered. "Aye," the other replied. "But not everyone is ready for what they find." Intrigued, Leah approached them. "Excuse me, what's the soul tree?" The men exchanged glances. "Just old folklore," one said cautiously. "Best not to pay it any mind." That evening, unable to shake her curiosity, Leah approached Mrs. Havisham. "What can you tell me about the soul tree?" The innkeeper sighed, setting down the teacup she was polishing. "It's an ancient part of the forest's lore. They say it's a tree that reflects your inner soul, showing you truths you might be hiding from yourself." "Has anyone ever found it?" Leah asked. "Some say they have, but they return changed." The forest is not just trees and trails, it's alive in ways we don't fully understand. If you choose to go, be sure you're prepared for what you might encounter. The next morning, Leah set out early, the locket tucked securely around her neck. The forest greeted her with a mosaic of sunlight filtering through dense foliage. Birds sang melodies that seemed to harmonize with the rustling leaves. As she ventured deeper, the path became less defined. The sounds of the village faded, replaced by the whispering wind and the crunch of leaves beneath her boots. Hours passed, or perhaps only minutes as the time felt elastic here. She came upon a brook with water so clear it was as if the stones at the bottom were floating. Taking a sip, she felt a refreshing coolness spread through her body. She pressed on, guided by an unspoken intuition. Suddenly, the forest opened into a vast clearing. At its center stood a colossal tree unlike any she had ever seen. Its trunk was wide enough to house a small cottage, and its branches stretched skyward, disappearing into the clouds. The leaves shimmered with hues that shifted between emerald, gold, and sapphire, casting a kaleidoscope of colors onto the ground below. Leah approached cautiously, her heart pounding. As she reached out to touch the bark, it felt warm, almost alive. The moment her fingertips made contact, a surge of energy coursed through her. The ground seemed to sway, and her vision blurred. When she opened her eyes, She was no longer in the clearing. She stood in a vast expanse where the sky was a tapestry of swirling colors. The ground beneath her feet was a reflective surface, like walking on water that rippled with each step. Ahead, she saw a small figure sitting alone, Leah herself as a child, swinging her legs over the edge of a dock. "Hello," Leah called out. The younger version turned, eyes wide with innocence. "You finally came back," she said softly. "Where am I?" Leah asked, approaching the child. "In the place you left behind," the child replied. "You used to visit me all the time." Memories flooded back her childhood dreams, the stories she wrote, the songs she sang when no one was listening. She had buried these parts of herself beneath layers of practicality and responsibility. "I've missed you," Leah whispered. The child smiled. "I'm always here, you just stopped looking." As they embraced, the scene shifted. She was now in a dimly lit room, walls adorned with clocks all ticking at different paces. In the center stood a mirror. Approaching it, Leah saw not her reflection but a shadowy figure with eyes that seemed to pierce through her. "Who are you?" she demanded. "I'm everything you fear," the shadow replied. "Your doubts, your failures, your guilt." "I don't want to face this," Leah said, stepping back. "But you must," the shadow insisted. "You've been running for so long." Images swirled around here: her mother's funeral, the breakup with her longtime boyfriend, the moment she decided her dreams weren't worth pursuing. The weight of these memories pressed down on her. Tears welled up in her eyes. "I can't change the past." "No," the shadow agreed. "But you can accept it." Summoning her courage, Leah stepped forward. "You're a part of me, but you don't control me." The shadow began to waver. "What do you want?" it asked, its voice softer now. "To forgive myself," she replied. "To let go of the pain and move forward." As she spoke the words, the shadow dissolved, and the room filled with light. She felt a warmth envelop her, and when she opened her eyes, she was back at the base of the soul tree. The forest seemed different now, a brighter, more vibrant. The air was rich with the scent of blossoms she hadn't noticed before. As she made her way back, the animals watched her with curious eyes, unafraid. The path that had been elusive now seemed straightforward, almost guiding her steps. Returning to the village, Mrs. Havisham was waiting on the porch of the inn. "Welcome back," she said with a knowing smile. "How did you know I'd return now?" Leah asked. "Time works differently for those who visit the soul tree," the innkeeper replied. "What felt like hours may have been days." Leah touched the locket around her neck. "I feel different, lighter." Mrs. Havisham nodded. "The forest has a way of showing us what we need to see." Over the next few days, Leah prepared to leave Willowbrook. She spent time with the villagers, absorbing their stories and sharing meals. On her last evening, she sat with Mrs. Havisham by the fireplace. "What's next for you?" the innkeeper asked. "I'm not entirely sure," Leah admitted. "But I know I want to reconnect with my family, with old friends, and with parts of myself I've neglected." Mrs. Havisham placed a hand on her shoulder. "That's a good start. Remember, the journey doesn't end here." Leah smiled. "I think I finally understand that." As she boarded the train back to the city, Leah felt a sense of anticipation rather than dread. The skyline that once loomed oppressively now seemed full of possibilities. She took out a notebook and began to write, capturing thoughts and ideas that flowed effortlessly. Upon her return, she reached out to her father, whom she hadn't spoken to since the funeral. They met for coffee, sharing memories and tears but also laughter. She called old friends, mended fences, and even picked up her guitar, a hobby she had abandoned years ago. Leah decided to channel her experience into something tangible. She began volunteering at a local community center, teaching art classes to children. Seeing their uninhibited creativity reminded her of the joy she once found in self-expression. One afternoon, while walking through a park, she felt a familiar warmth. She looked up to see a tree that reminded her of the soul tree, not in grandeur but in essence. She sat beneath it, closed her eyes, and breathed deeply. "I'm still here," she whispered to herself. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves above. As if in response, Leah's days became a tapestry of meaningful moments woven together by newfound purpose. One morning, she received an email from a publishing house expressing interest in a short story she had submitted months ago, a story she had nearly forgotten about. They wanted to feature it in an upcoming anthology about personal transformation. Buoyed by this news, she poured herself into writing, each word a step further along her path of self-discovery. Her experiences in Willowbrook and the encounter with the sultry became the backbone of a novel she felt compelled to share with the world. She hoped that her journey might inspire others to seek out their own truths. One afternoon, while teaching an art class at the community center, a young girl named Mia caught her attention. Mia was quiet, often staying after class to perfect her drawings. Leah noticed the depth in her eyes, a longing she recognized. "Your work is beautiful," Leah told her one day. "You have a real gift." Mia shrugged. "It's just something I do when I feel alone." Leah knelt beside her. "I used to feel that way too." Sometimes creating art helps us express things we can't say out loud. Mia looked up. "Did it help you?" "More than you know." Leah smiled. "Would you like to show me more of your drawings?" As Mia opened her sketchbook, Leah saw pages filled with intricate trees and forests, much like the ones she had seen in Willowbrook. Her heart skipped a beat. "These trees, where did you see them?" "I dream about them," Mia replied softly. "They make me feel safe." Leah felt a connection, a thread linking her experiences to this young girl. "Hold on to those dreams, Mia. They're important." That evening, Leah couldn't shake the feeling that her journey with the sultry was part of something larger, a tapestry of interconnected stories and lives. She began organizing a weekend retreat at a park on the outskirts of the city, inviting the children from the community center and their families. The goal was simple: to reconnect with nature and, in doing so, with themselves. The retreat was a success. Families gathered around campfires, sharing stories under the stars. Children laughed and played, their faces illuminated by the flickering light. Leah led a group in a meditation exercise she had learned in Willowbrook, guiding them to visualize a place where they felt whole and at peace. As the weekend drew to a close, parents expressed their gratitude. "This was exactly what we needed," one mother said. "We've been so caught up in our routines that we forgot what it was like to just be together." Leah realized that by helping others find their way, she was continuing her own journey of healing. She began to host these retreats regularly, each time witnessing the transformative power of connection and self-reflection. One day, she received a letter on crisp, cream-colored stationery. It was from Mrs. Havisham. "Dear Leah, word travels even to our quiet corner of the world. I hear you've been doing wonderful things back in the city. The sultry has a way of planting seeds in those who visit, seeds that grow and spread to others. The villagers send their regards, and we hope you'll visit us again soon. Warmly, Mrs. Havisham." Leah felt a warmth bloom in her chest. She decided it was time to return to Willowbrook, not because she was lost, but because she wanted to share her journey with those who had set her on her path. Upon arriving, she was greeted with open arms. The village was just as she remembered, yet it felt different and more alive, more vibrant. She spent time with the villagers, sharing stories of her work in the city. They, in turn, told her tales of others who had come seeking the sultry. One morning, Leah ventured back into the forest. This time, the path was clear, as if welcoming her return. The forest seemed to recognize her, the leaves rustling in greeting. She found the clearing, and there stood the sultry, magnificent as ever. She placed a hand on its bark, feeling the familiar warmth. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." Closing her eyes, she allowed herself to simply be. No visions overtook her this time. Instead, she felt a profound sense of peace. When she opened her eyes, she saw someone standing across the clearing, a woman with ethereal features and eyes that mirrored her own. "Hello, Leah," the woman said softly. "Do I know you?" Leah asked, though she felt an inexplicable familiarity. "I am the guide," the woman replied, "a reflection of your inner wisdom." Leah nodded. "Why are you here now?" "To show you that your journey continues," the guide said. "You've grown, but there is always more to learn, more to share." They walked together through the forest, the conversation flowing effortlessly. The guide spoke of balance, of the importance of nurturing oneself while helping others. "Remember to listen to your own needs," she advised. "You cannot pour from an empty cup." As they reached the edge of the forest, the guide stopped. "This is where I leave you." "Will I see you again?" Leah asked. The guide smiled. "I am always with you, as long as you listen." Leah returned to the village, her mind buzzing with inspiration. She spent the next few days documenting her experiences, not just for herself but as a manuscript for her book. The words flowed freely, her thoughts aligning with a clarity she hadn't felt before. On her last evening in Willow Brook, the villagers gathered for a farewell celebration. Lanterns hung from tree branches, casting a warm glow over the festivities. Music filled the air, a harmonious blend of instruments and voices. Mrs. Havisham approached Leah with a wrapped parcel. "A gift for you," she said. Leah unwrapped it to find a beautifully carved wooden pendant of the soul tree. "It's exquisite," she breathed. "Made from a fallen branch," Mrs. Havisham explained. "May it keep you connected to the wisdom you found here." "Thank you," Leah said, her eyes misting. "For everything." As she journeyed back to the city, Leah felt a profound sense of fulfillment. She had come full circle, yet she knew this was just another beginning. Months later, her book was published. Titled The Soul Tree, it wove together her personal journey with universal themes of self-discovery and healing. The response was overwhelming. Letters poured in from readers who felt touched, inspired, and motivated to embark on their own paths of introspection. One letter stood out, a message from a woman who had been on the brink of giving up. "Your story saved me," it read. "I realize that I, too, can confront my shadows and find peace." Leah understood then that her purpose extended beyond her own healing. She was a catalyst, a guide in her own right, helping others navigate their inner worlds. She continued her retreats, expanding them to include workshops and seminars. Collaborating with therapists, artists, and spiritual leaders, she created spaces where people could explore their identities and heal their wounds. One evening, after a particularly rewarding retreat, Leah sat under a starlit sky. Mia, now a confident teenager, sat beside her. "Do you ever miss the city life?" Mia asked. Leah thought for a moment. "I used to think the city was the problem, but it wasn't the place, yet it was me. I was disconnected from myself. Now, I feel at home wherever I am." Mia smiled. "I'm glad you found your way. You've helped me find mine." They sat in comfortable silence, the sounds of the night enveloping them. As the years passed, Leah's work touched countless lives. Yet she remained humble, always attributing her success to the moment she dared to face herself beneath the soul tree. One day, she received an invitation to speak at an international conference on mental health and wellness. Standing on the stage before thousands, she shared her story once more, knowing that among the crowd, there were souls searching for their own trees. "Each of us carries a landscape within," she concluded. "A place where our truths reside. It's not always easy to journey there, but it's the most important voyage we'll ever make." The audience erupted in applause, but more importantly, Leah saw the spark in their eye as at the beginning of their own transformations. After the conference, she returned to Willow Brook. The village had become a haven for seekers from all over the world, drawn by the legend of the soul tree. The villagers embraced the influx, sharing their wisdom and preserving the sanctity of the forest. Leah walked the familiar path, now well trodden by many feet. The soul tree stood as ever, a silent guardian and teacher. Placing both hands on its trunk, she closed her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, "for guiding me so that I may guide others." A gentle breeze rustled the leaves, and she felt a profound sense of unity with herself, with nature, and with every soul she had touched. Her journey had come full circle, But the path ahead was endless, branching out like the limbs of the soul tree, reaching toward infinity.